See people comment.
We're live. We are live. This is so crazy. Everyone, good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. We usually stream directly to Facebook, but Facebook changed the settings today. So now we getting this set up. Now we are streaming live on YouTube. And I'm posting on Facebook right now. So very interesting, but good morning. How are you, Gordana?
Good morning, Lucas. I'm fine. It's like Facebook is doing April Fools only a few days earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Let me get this over on Facebook and my Power Talk. There we go. And I are live now. All right. Well, there we are. Hello.
Cool.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Happy Sunday.
I guess when you hit live stream, it actually starts live streaming right away.
No time to change your mind.
Exactly.
True.
I'm so glad we're doing this. Last week, people really resonated with what we were talking about. It's a very serious subject.
Yes, it is. I mean, knowing that you don't have to love your parents, because most of us feel the pressure from society and from culture that we need to love our parents, even though we might have had a hard time living with our parents. So I feel like it's a really hot topic. That's why we're doing a second part of it. That's right. Because it felt like last Sunday, the hour was too short for us to do this. And today we simply continue where we left off at last Sunday. And I feel like it's not just that it is a hot topic, it's also a taboo topic. We cannot speak about it. And I think, as I said before, the cultural pressure is that we have to love our parents. And we know that the answer is that we don't have to love our parents. We have to understand what happened to us. We have to maybe understand them, but we don't have to love them if it doesn't feel right to do so. There are people that come from very complicated childhoods and feel the guilt that they're not loving their parents their entire life. And why would you go around with a sense of feeling guilty all your life when you don't have to? There's nothing wrong with not loving your parents. Hating them is worse.
Yeah.
Not loving them is okay.
Yeah, it's in the word, like I say every time, I always feel like want to use everyone listening, you and I, even the word love, it's like we come at it from these different shades and these different perspectives. And I'll say again, what I've learned is we can be a loving person, but not everyone is worthy of our love, to put our love into them. But I can remain a loving person. So in the regards of that, they are human beings on this planet. Yes, we can love that they're human beings, but to have that energetic connection and pour into them and be in relationship with them, absolutely not. That would be insane to tell any person who has been a victim of a perpetrator to stay in that position of victimhood with the perpetrator, especially when the perpetrators have taken no responsibility, have taken no accountability, and still blame or put it back on the victim. It's so crazy. So in that regards, correct. We don't have to be in these loving relationships. In fact, the most loving thing to do to them is to detach and say, you are going to live with the results of your actions.
Absolutely. Because if we continue to love them, I think that we have a problem with maybe mixing love and loyalty up with each other. I mean, the words loyalty is one thing, love is something else. Love is freedom. Loyalty can be a very tricky thing because it might put you in a bond to someone with whom you do not wish to have a bond. And
Right.
that would be a traumatic bond, which would translate into maybe Stockholm syndrome, because you are attached to your perpetrator and you're the victim.
Right.
And that can never give you a full life. That can never allow you to breathe in and be who you truly are, because you have this gravitational pull, this traumatic bond to someone who has abused you, who had the responsibility for your care, but yet didn't give you the care that you needed.
Right.
And there is so much going on in, when we look at it, we are born into this world at the mercy of others. We are born into this world at the power of our parents. They have so much responsibility because they are our caregivers. This is why children are sweet and cute when you look at them, because their job is to evoke, to attract love from their parents.
Right.
And the cuteness is enough. You don't have to do anything. You're cute. You're a bundle of cuteness when you're born. And
Right.
if you are born to, say, narcissistic parents, or parents that are alcoholics or that are depressed, they might not be able to see the cuteness and not have the love evoked within them. But that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And yet you are in the same room as them.
Right.
I mean, as a small child, I say, I would love to put it this way: until you can reach the doorknob, you depend on the people in the room with you.
Yeah.
That's how much responsibility a parent has to the children. I mean, you can't leave. You have to stay there. You are dependent on them. And if your survival depends on them seeing you and giving you care and love, you will do anything to survive. Anything.
Yeah.
And if they are incapable of seeing you, what happens with a child is that that child won't, I mean, you trust that your caregivers are almost like gods. They are there to take care of you. They know everything. They are everything. They're authorities in your life. As a child, you can't see their flaws. You can only think of them as the authorities. And if they can't see you, if they don't give you what you want, as a child, you will turn that inward and you will say, what's wrong with me? Why can't these gods, these authorities, these caretakers take care of me? Because there's something wrong with me. That's why they don't love me.
Right.
And that's how you start hating yourself, feeling not good enough. I think that 90% of people I talk to out there, when I ask them, what are you struggling with? They would say, I'm not good enough. And it comes from this place where you're not seen and heard as a child, because that is your birthright. It's not just your birthright. Your life depends on being seen and taken care of, because you can't do it yourself.
Right.
And that's where all this complication, the complicated relationships start with the parents, not with the children. It's
Right.
always there.
Well, yesterday I taught a course with Aaron Scotty on sovereignty, and we were talking about how do we give our sovereignty away. And he created this list: the education system, medical, big pharma, financial and banking systems, the government, science, religion, Hollywood. And then I said, you got to include the family structure.
Yes, absolutely.
It is it, and I would say that precedes all other structures, because how people view themselves in relation to, are they enough, simply by being, which stems from whether they receive that as a child in that parent dynamic or not, is directly correlated to how people perceive all these institutional authorities. And people are doing anything to get the approval of the degrees on the wall, or the white coats, or the authorities. And people are still in this childlike function of pleasing to do anything.
Yes.
And
But
it's sad. It's sad.
yes, it is, because what happens when you know that you have to do something in order to be seen, What will you do? Well, you will try to be a good boy or a good girl. You're going to do everything your parents want you to do just so that they will give you love.
Mm,
This creates a relationship where you, or an imprint, a belief that is imprinted in you, that you think that love is transactional,
mm,
which means that if I do this, then they will love me.
mm.
And you become a people pleaser when this happens, which means that you will see authorities everywhere and you will not know your own worth. And in order to raise your worth, you will try to please the authorities
Mm.
wherever you see them. It's a pattern. It doesn't have to be your parents, it can be anything, a teacher, a lover, anyone that you feel you want to be seen by.
Right.
And this becomes your way of living. It has, when you're a grown up, it has nothing to do with your parents anymore. They just instilled it, or maybe not your parents, it could be a teacher in your childhood or anyone else that was there to take care of you.
Right.
And unless you find that moment where this was instilled, or understand the pattern, or feel when the filter comes over you, you will be living in a very, very narrow world where you are always seeking approval from the outside
Right.
and never being satisfied with who you are. So that is why it is so important to say that, okay, I maybe don't love my parents because they didn't know what I needed as a child.
Yeah.
Because it is every parent's responsibility to understand that I have given life, and this life needs to be taken care of
Yeah.
unconditionally,
Yep.
standing in that truth. And I don't think a lot of people understand this.
I had an interesting moment just earlier this week where me, thankfully, my children have been the most incredible gift to me
Mm,
of
yes,
healing and painting the picture of what pure virtue is. And they're all
yes.
three so different, and allowing them to be. And I have two girls and a boy. And my son, it's like God knew exactly what I needed, because my son is such a beautiful soul, and he is so sensitive, and he is so sweet.
Mm,
And for me, when and he cries longer than I am, it's not even what I
talked.
care about, but what I
Mm,
was taught. And I'm trying to balance being tough and not letting the pain be greater than your awareness,
mm,
and also fully emoting what you need to emote and just be. And
mm,
so there's these concepts that I'm wrestling with. However, when I was a kid, if I cried, I would get hurt worse. Period.
mm,
That was it. There was no, it was always, I'll give you something to cry about if you don't stop
mm,
crying. And then
mm,
I was given something to cry about, which I
mm,
stopped crying anyway. And it's just a sick cycle. So
mm,
I said something to my son. I was like, I want, be tough. But I don't want to say tough it out, suck it up. That's not the narrative I was
mm,
trying to create, this and like cry and be tough. And my wife said, no,
mm,
not working. And I was like, that's all she needed to say. And I'm like, I got it. So later he was walking on the stairs. I said, buddy, come here. And I sat down next to him and I said, I'm
mm.
sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel like crying wasn't okay.
Okay.
Um, and I said, I want you to cry as long as you want to cry. Me
Mm,
growing up, it was hard because I wasn't allowed to cry, and I'm learning something. And he
mm,
said, why weren't you allowed to cry? I said, because I would get hurt worse. And he goes, that's mean. And I go, yeah,
mm,
buddy, it was really mean. And he gave me a hug, and I hugged him. And it was like, I had the humility to apologize to him. He had the
mm,
wisdom to say, that's really mean. I'm like, it gives me children now.
mm,
Like, yeah, I could cry. Like, yeah, that is mean. And I experienced it. And here you are as a wise 6-year-old with the
mhm,
understanding. And it's just beautiful. And so I share all that to say that if we don't have the emotional awareness of what we've gone through and then what we're continuing now in the now cycle, we will continue the cycle of what we went
Yes.
through.
Yes.
And it's time that I think we all awaken to say no
Mm,
more. The pain stops with me.
mm.
The pain stopped with you.
Yes.
And yet
I
there's some
mean,
lingering things that will come up. I'm like, oh, okay.
yes. Yes, but do you see the beauty in him telling you that is mean?
Yeah.
It is almost like he is a witness to your pain and
Mm,
he can take it.
yeah.
Do you see the strength in him when he can
Yeah.
take that and say, this is mean?
Yeah.
And also being sensitive. I'm so sick of people saying, oh, you're so sensitive, because that was what I've heard that all my life.
Yeah.
Oh, you're overly sensitive. If I am sensitive, that means that I am open.
Yeah.
I am vulnerable. I am open to all that is. I can sense things. That is why I am here, by the way.
Right.
I'm not here to numb my senses. I'm here
Right.
to use my senses.
Right.
That in itself is insane to say you're overly sensitive.
Right.
But also, what I have come to realize by studying this for many, many years is that manifestation depends on emotion. You
Mm,
have a thought, and then the thought becomes an idea, but the idea does not come into this world until you boost it with emotion. So
yes.
emotion is actually the fuel of manifestation. Now think of it this way: if you are sensitive, that means that you can feel a lot of things. How much fuel do you have for manifestation,
Mm,
both the positive and the negative side of
yeah.
it?
Right.
And if you can learn how to harness this emotion and direct it, can you see how powerful you are with your sensitivity?
Right.
It is, this world teaches us that if you're sensitive, then you have no power because others can hurt you. Yes,
Mm,
they can because you stand open, but if you learn how to use that sensitivity without numbing it, then you are really in a really, really good position as a powerful human being.
so good. So good.
So
Yes.
I love how your son turned this around and showed you what strength his wisdom has when he
Yeah.
can look at it and say, that's mean,
Yeah.
because it is mean. That's the sane way of looking at it.
Yeah.
He mirrored it back to you. I love that.
Yeah. It was a really beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And I also was not doing what was done to me, but it was just enough for me to be
Yes.
aware, um, and I'm very clear because of how I've chosen with my life and relationship
Mm,
to any family structure that I've come from. If my
mm,
children choose that for whatever reason, I am unhealthy in their life, then I bless
mm,
them in their sovereignty and freedom. I bless
mm,
them on their path.
mm,
I am not going to try to control, manipulate, hedge to do what? To stifle a soul's
mm.
purpose here on this planet. That is not that is not what I'm going to do. And my wife and I, Lauren and I, are very clear about just holding space for them. And
Yes.
in that holding space, of course, they're not going to want to leave because they're free already. They can come or go. But if they so choose
Yes.
to distance, I love them
Mm,
unconditionally and will go wherever they need me to go. And I will be wherever they need me to be without
mm,
any form of control, manipulation, guilt,
mm.
narrative, just love.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes we do these things unconsciously because we are
Mm,
programmed to do them.
right.
This is why we need to, like in our course that we're doing, go back and see, where was I programmed with this? Because sometimes you think that you're doing something out of love,
Right.
but you're not. You're doing it out of fear that that person might leave you. Let's
Right.
say that you grow up as a people's pleaser and you have a child, and this child has its own will. You will do anything to
Mm, mm,
keep that child with you, but that's also not the real you. Your children are here to show you the real you. As you say, the freedom seeking you, the
yes.
curious you. And if you're not present in that, if you're not willing to go back and say, what was I contaminated with as a child? Look
Mm,
at this and then remove it the best way you can. I know that when my son was born, I felt like all the every past ancestor standing behind me in this frequency transference, I told myself that I am in this power position because I can stop all the abuse that has been before me by saying no, letting it take a U-turn through me right back where it came from, because I will not let it into this world. This means that I make an intention, or I promise myself that I will not act through ego filters, that I will try to find the loving place within me every single time I speak to my child. That's sometimes it's really, really hard, because children will trigger every single belief system you have within you. And that's the point. They trigger it because you need to look at it and you need to change it. They are giving you an opportunity to stop all the abusive frequencies that are in your, almost like in your DNA.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. I was
go
saying,
ahead, go ahead.
it's the insane person who would continue that cycle on the child and then force them to be the one that stops it. And usually that doesn't happen. It has to be us, the sovereign adult, to say, this shall not pass any further.
Absolutely. That's the responsibility when you have a child. And a lot of people do not like to hear this because they think that I've got a child, it's in my care, I own this child, and it has to do as I say. And that is insane to me. I mean, there is, you don't own the child. It is put in your care, but you don't own it. That's what parenting is.
Right.
I think that it's really important to understand what happens in a child when a parent doesn't take care of it, because the child, it won't turn against its parents because they are its caretakers. It won't ask what's wrong with my parents. It will go inward because that's the only place, or that's the only thing that they can control. It is their inner world. They know, children are born wise because they know that they can't change the outer world. So they go inward instead, and they would ask questions. So what's wrong with me? Why am I not lovable? What's wrong with me? They won't say what's wrong with my parents.
Right.
They will say what's wrong with me. Now, I remember myself, and this is maybe unusual, but I was 3 years old, and my mother, I was here visiting her because, as you know, my mother put me in my aunt's care when I was 4 months old. And then I was here on a vacation when my brother was born, and he was 3.5 years old. No, he was just born and I was 3.5 years old. And my mother told me to go and fetch something, but she didn't say please. She just told me, go fetch this, like that. And I did not like that. So I turned around and I said to her, I am not your slave. You cannot speak to me this way. I'm 3.5 years old. And I say this to her. So she picks me up and she hits me because I say so. And that's where I learned that I cannot speak back to my caretakers, because there is danger if I do this. I might die if I do this. They do not understand my sovereignty. I need to hide my sovereignty. I need to hide who I am in order not to be hit or abused in any way. I knew that. I was 3.5 years old and I answered her the proper way. That's unusual. Most children never do that because they figure out very, very early on what they can say and do. For me, it was like I was with my aunt and she was a loving person. So I wasn't used to that atmosphere. And then I came to them and that was a whole different atmosphere there. So I learned very quickly that I couldn't do this. The same thing goes with, I knew when I was maybe 5 that there was something wrong with my father, but he's an authority in the home. He is the male dominant frequency. And my mother was like this when he came into the room. And I remember telling her that there's something wrong with him because he was scolding me. I was coming home from school. And I came home very late because I was playing with someone. I didn't know the time. I mean, children don't know the time. And he was scolding me. He was angry at me. And I remember thinking, there's something wrong with him. Why is he doing this? I can't understand this. So I go to my mother and I ask her, what, there's something wrong with him. And she gets really angry and says, you can never ever say something like that about him. What if he hears you? There's going to be consequences of this. So she taught me what I could and couldn't say. Again, that's not usual. The usual thing is that the child figures it out very silently and alone and never speaks about this. Keeps it to itself, knows exactly what it needs to say in order to survive. And I think that is where the real problems start. And parents who are not awake, they don't see this. They will say, oh, well, yeah, she's an introvert girl.
Right.
But that might not be the truth. That might be she's hiding because she's afraid.
That is such a I don't even know if I'm gonna you telling that story brings up a story that I've never shared publicly. I don't even know if I've shared with you in any of the coaching that we used to do. But when I was 5th or 6th grade, I spent the night at my cousin's house, and my aunt told me to put my bag by the door. So I put my bag by the bedroom door that I stayed the night in. And she said to me again, put the bag by the door. And I said I did. And then she came in butt naked and started beating me. First time I'd ever seen a naked female body, like full naked, and started just beating the crap out of me. She's like, I said, bring it by the front door. And I'm like, I mean, so shocked. And I can laugh about it now because I've processed it. It was the craziest shit. And I was so embarrassed that I had saw her naked body. And like, even right now, it's like it's vividly imprinted in my mind. I can, it's insane. But I live with so much shame. I mean, not only was I abused at home, but then it was just, my whole life was so fucking crazy. And I tried to correct my internal world to override the shame and all this confusion and feeling dirty and wrong and broken and just disgusting. And when I gave my TED Talk back in 2019, I said something that I wish I could have elaborated on for a full TED Talk, which is, don't judge others' behavior, because behavior is just an output of an internal belief structure about oneself.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
if we've been abused and we have yet to heal, oh man, there's so many people. I mean, how many people are in the world right now operating from trying to course correct something that happened in their past without saying, no, they were wrong, and still living with something's wrong with me, as opposed to nothing's wrong with me inherently. It's just I have yet to heal or bring to the light these things that were done to me by these adults that held power over us, threatened us, hurt us, intimidated us, scared us. Anyway, it's just, you brought up the aunt and your mom. I'm like, God, I have a weird aunt story. It's super weird.
It's a weird aunt story.
It's a weird aunt story. It's one aunt story no one wants.
But is it on your mother's or your father's side?
Father's side.
Yes, I could guess that, because there is this insanity thread going through. And this is what I mean when I say that where you stand, all of them are behind you with the frequencies going through you, because you're the one that has been abused by them. And you stand there and you have that power to say, no, I'm not letting that frequency further, because I am sane.
Yeah.
And I can work with this. You can stand in the observer position in your meditations, and you can see, you can look at things outside of yourself. They are not capable of doing this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing what they did to you. So just that part gives you the power to stop that frequency. I see this power to stop it as something that everyone has.
Mm.
Every single one of us can stop the frequency that we have inherited by 2, 3, or more human beings in our closest space, so to speak.
Yeah.
For me, it was a frequency of a dominant, I can't even find the right word, narcissist, and a submissive victim. These were the dynamics where that was the soup that I was living in. And these two people over my head gave me belief systems, which I allowed to be in me because that was a survival mechanism. You have to stay in that. You can't leave. And if I do not look at this now as a grown up, I allow their frequency to go through me into my child and then into my grandchildren. I stand here and I can say no to that. I can say, no, I'm not allowing it. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to cleanse it. I'm going to go back and correct what needs to be corrected in my mind, remove the belief systems that are not supposed to be there, clean my vision board in my mind, and then act from that and see where it goes. I might inflict something else upon my son, but it won't be what they gave me in that intensity. That is why I think it's important to go in and be honest with yourself. If you didn't have a loving relationship to your parents, if you felt like they didn't take care of you, then ask yourself, do I really love them? What is this love? How do I define love if I say that I love them? Do you love spending time with your parents? If you don't like spending time with your parents, then probably you don't love them. You are loyal to them, but you don't love them. And that's a Stockholm syndrome.
Gosh, it's so
true, isn't it?
It's so true. It's so clear. And yet it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to admit it to oneself. And I see an interview someone did with me got released yesterday, and I was watching part of it, and I was describing how people would tell me that they judged their family based on my family growing up because it looked like the perfect family. And I said, you have to understand, think why. Because if I didn't keep that image of perfection, what do you think would happen? So when I go home, so the bifurcation, my duality, the being able to smile and everything looks perfect is the only way I could protect myself. And then that's only what I allowed people to see. And then I was talking in this interview that, and then people liked my veneer. People liked my facade. I benefited from it. So why would I ever drop it? And yet it was killing the true me. I was getting hired. I was a TV reporter. I was on air. I was all the things that people liked, but it wasn't my truth. It was performance to protect myself. And this I see now when I see people and I see that smile, like we've all seen the TV shows, they look like the perfect family, but behind these smiles, and it zooms in, you're like, what happened? You're like, yeah, what? Because everyone's like, and then we go back. This is why everyone watching now or later, when you watch the replay, Gordana and I are coming out with, I think, the most powerful course that I've ever heard of for anyone to take, because we're going back and looking at photos from our childhood and identifying the truth, who we really were, what was really happening. And it takes courage, but it is worth everything. I would not trade 1 second for the life I have now. There's nothing that I would trade. I am free. My wife and I are free. My children are free. And I want everyone to experience that freedom. It is worth everything.
Absolutely. It's about going back in time, finding that child and helping the child understand that it is perfect as it is, that it is not broken, that it is whole, allowing that child to do whatever it needs to do, being the witness to every frustration that child has, without feeling the pain in the now moment, just being there for that child. just doing that, reminding myself of the little girl, seeing her, being her own, being her mother, mothering her, has been a really freeing thing for me too while we were doing this course. It's like reinventing myself or finding myself again. Even though I do know, I mean, I can sit in this core and know who I am. But at the same time, when I go back and look at this little girl, I'm reminded of things that I take for granted now. I can see it in her. But for 30 years, I couldn't even sense who I was because of the traumas I had as a child. So going back and finding myself again gives me this pleasure of knowing who I am in my now moment and acting from it, because that is one of the most important things. There is one thing to know who you are while you're in meditation. There's a whole different thing acting on it on every single moment in every day of your life, acting on knowing who you are and acting from that position. Until you do that, you are asleep in a way, or you are in ego mode that was triggered from your childhood, unless you go in and look at it. Because even if you're a victim, you're still working from ego mode. It's not just the perpetrators who are in ego mode, even the victims are in ego mode, because we trigger each other's ego while this is happening. And as a child, you have no choice but being triggered by your parents, because you're locked in this room and you're not tall enough to open the door and walk out.
Right.
Frustration. Go ahead.
Asked you what happened when, what was your, because I know I started having flashbacks and I hit rock bottom, but what was yours at 30 that clicked for you? What were you experiencing
in my 30s?
Yeah, when you finally had your awakening to
yes, it was Hubert. It was my son giving birth to him. I mean, there were certain things, small awakenings now here and there, but giving birth to him, not just giving birth to him, actually being pregnant with him, feeling that energy inside of me, his energy inside of me, understanding that there is a human being, a vulnerable, beautiful human being within me that was going to come into this world, and I was responsible for it. And I had 9 months to find that calmness within me so that I will be able to receive him in this world. I remember that when I was going to give birth to him, I had a list that was this long of what they could do to my child and not do to my child. And then I was holding Gregor, my husband, very close to me, and I was like, look what they're doing. I don't want them to cross anything. I was so protective of him, but this was, of course, also a program within me because I wasn't protected as a child. So I wanted to protect him from everything. I mean, I was holding my breath in the shower while he was laying on the floor, and I was looking at him all the time so that nothing would happen to him while I was showering. I mean, it was insane. But at the same time, this was my awakening because I understood what my responsibility as a parent was, but I could also see how little of this responsibility my parents actually had. They didn't understand what to do. I knew that I knew better. So there was this gradual awakening, which like a firework exploded when I held him in my arms for the first time. And since then, it has been a slow awakening, opening up, like breathing in and out all the time. And he's 23 now. So you see, it's never ending. It continues forever. And also, there was another thing. I saw how this changed my husband's life when he was born. Because my husband, Gregor, was he was very focused on the outer stuff in life, like business and money and having a great home and stuff. And when our son was born, it kind of flipped over for him and he started focusing on himself instead. I need to show you a picture of him and my husband. Let me see if I can do that. Can you see? Let's see. Can you
Oh
see
my
him?
gosh. Yeah, that's so
He's
sweet.
working, by the way.
So sweet. Is that a backpack?
Yeah.
Is he in a little back?
No. He's just
Oh, he's
sitting.
just holding on to that.
Yes, he's standing on a chair
Oh,
behind him, and
that's so
that's the
cute.
way Gregor used to work at that time. It's changed his total perspective of life, and just looking at him, seeing how he was changed, also helped me to change. I realized that we need to change. We cannot live our lives the way we lived them before without guilt tripping the child because we had to change, because he didn't ask to come here. We brought him into this world.
Yes. It's really a beautiful man, it makes me emotional. It's so beautiful. It's very beautiful. And if parents, if people, if adults wake up now and say, and really question, truthfully look at, not to make excuses for, that is playing their role of defending themselves, but truly looking at it and saying, how was I treated? Would I treat a stranger that way? Would I treat
Exactly.
a dog that way? I would never treat a dog. That's why when I start my TED talk, I say, have you ever seen someone do this to a puppy? And I start taking a belt to my hand and then I drop them. Of course not. If we saw how people treat children, the way if we saw people treating animals, the way people think it's okay to treat children, we'd lock these people up forever. But because
Yes.
it's children and they're the parents, it's literally insanity expressed as virtue, and it's anything but. It is time for us to really look at it and not, and this is I think the rub. When we look at it, we're not indicting them. We're looking at freeing us. And in freeing us, perhaps they will be free because there's no more energetic bond to connect and
Exactly.
put their pain onto us. Maybe they'll be free, maybe not, but I'm not responsible for them. I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for the home that I have created, my children and their environment. And I'm not going to bring any of that sickness into my energetic field any longer. And I don't care who they are. I don't care what title they come from, what bloodline they have, what name they have, what power structure they have. I don't care how much they love their power structure. If it is not healthy and honoring and loving and truly respect for the sovereignty of an individual.
Exactly. You know, for me, it was like, I would ask myself questions. The first question was, do I enjoy meeting my parents? Do I enjoy spending time with my parents? And the answer was always no, because I couldn't be myself. I was always on the edge, always looking out, not to hurt them, not to do something that they won't approve of. You can't be yourself in an environment like that. So if the answer is no, when you ask yourself, do I like spending time with my parents? Then you probably do not love your parents, because there are things in your background that are not cleared.
Right.
You might find love to them if you clear it and they're willing to work with it, and maybe not. But that's not the issue. The other thing for me was when my son was born and I started thinking, would I leave him with my parents alone? Never would I do that, which means that there is something that is not clear there. There is something that was done that didn't work for me, even if you don't remember what it was. But if you ask yourself the question, would I leave my child with my father or with my mother or with both of them? For me, it was easier to leave with my mother, but only if she was in my home and I was around. With my father, never. So that tells you a lot of how the relationship to your parents are and if it's love or not. And I know that it isn't love when it comes to my parents. From me, it's more of loyalty, guilt, culture, society,
Right.
belief systems around us working. And it's okay to say that that's the case.
Yeah.
You don't need to sit with the guilt. Ask yourself the question and answer it honestly. You don't even need to share it with anyone else. Would I leave my children there? If the answer is yes, then you have a great relationship with your parents. You love them and everything is okay. But if the answer is no, then there are issues that needs to be looked at if you want to have a relationship to your parents, if you want to say that you love them. Otherwise, it is loyalty or guilt, nothing else.
Love has to come from free choice.
Yes.
Or it's not love.
Yes. Yes.
So unless we really look and ask these questions honestly, we can't say it's love. It might be a feeling that we've had since childhood of this, but love is choice. Love is free. Yes. Love is free will. Love is autonomy. Love is not coercion. And so the only way we can know if we love is if we ask,
would I spend time?
Would I spend time? Yeah.
Yes.
It's also, I'm thinking of like so many people that I've talked to this. Sometimes I think people hear this type of narrative and they think, whoa, they're saying I have to not love my parents. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you are free to look at you and how you feel as a human being. And are you free? And if you're not free, then why? And what obligations are you continually living with a family structure that I guarantee are affecting every other part of your life?
Yes, absolutely. Without a doubt, that's the thing. If you have these unresolved issues, if there is something that is unresolved from your childhood, it's like a filter. It will not allow you to see the world the way it is. It will allow you to see the world you were taught as a child. And that might not be the truth in the now moment for you. If you want to know the truth, you have to be able to peel off all the layers of these belief systems that were put there. And it's not all parents are aware of what they're doing. Most parents are totally unaware of that they're inflicting belief systems that are not beneficial for their children because they have been inflicted with them. Yeah. So it's not about being aware of it. It's not about being mean. Sometimes it's just that you don't know what it is that you're giving to your children through the relationships. I mean, when you live or when you have a complicated childhood as I had and as you had, there are survival mechanisms which we adapt or we learn very early on. And it can be later on in life, we won't interpret them as survival mechanisms. We will interpret them as our way of being in life. That includes pleasing others, seeking approval all the time, feeling unworthy. A lot of people feel unworthy, and it comes from their childhood because they're born worthy. Everyone is born worthy. So why would you feel unworthy unless something happened to you to make you feel this way? Some people go around angry, and some people turn it inwards and it becomes self-hatred instead. It can be loneliness. For me, it was lonely.
Uh-oh. I think I lost your audio. Lost your audio. Oh. Well, you were saying for you it's loneliness, and for me it was self-hatred. You were saying for you it's loneliness, but for me it was self-hatred.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you when I thought about this, because self-hatred is actually anger. You were probably very angry at your parents, your mother for mistreating you, not protecting you, your father for doing what he did to you. I mean, physically abusing you the way he did. And of course, that is anger. But since you cannot express that anger outwardly, because that would mean that he might kill you,
it's
yes. I mean, yeah. So of course you will turn it inwards, and it becomes self-hatred instead. And if you do not look at these things, that's the filter that your subconscious mind uses when you interpret everything around you. And this is also how we continue to inflict our children with this, because we think that we see the truth through this filter. It's never the truth.
Right. That is so good. People think
Yeah.
it's the truth,
Yeah.
but it's
And
not
it's not.
ever going to be the truth, because the
No.
truth makes us free. And if we have a
Yes.
filter, we're not free.
The truth is always the broadest perspective, the most light perspective, the brightest side of everything. When you look at your children, to look at them with the brightest light you can, that is where you will find the truth. If you're interpreting it as some kind of lack within your children, then you are looking through your ego, which is triggered by old patterns and the filters that are there. So it can never be the truth if you see something that is bad in your children. It is never the truth. It is your ego interpreting it as truth because you have been conditioned to look at it this way, because you have been looked upon with the same glasses. And that's why I say this takes a U-turn here and goes right back where it came from, not looking, because the truth is, if I do not look at my son with loving eyes, I am not seeing him. I am seeing my ego reflected upon him. That's where it is.
That's exactly getting back to like my son crying earlier this week, and that
Yes.
it was in my ego, and it was this conflict of me being angry at what I've gone through. We talked about this like a year ago. I was not angry at him. I was just angry. I was angry at what happened to me. I was angry at but he just happened to reflect what I went through.
Yes.
The other thing that is striking while we're talking about this is Jesus, an incredible master and teacher of sovereignty and love and light, said, unless you become as a little child, you may not enter the kingdom of heaven. We have to go back and really look at as we were as children, and so that we can stay open, stay sensitive, remain our truest sense, our loving, creative, exploratory, effervescent selves.
Yeah, it's about coming into innocence again.
Yes.
When you look through ego, you do not look through innocence. Innocence is not judging. Innocence is there. It is exploring, and it is exploring from a loving space, from your heart. This is what children do. They don't know anything else. They are born into this world innocent. This is, when you look at a child, it says innocent. And if you do not look at that child, regardless of age, with that spectrum of innocence, you will never see the child. You will see yourself and your problems and your, what you have from your backpack or from your past.
Yes.
That's the only thing you can see, because that is the frequency. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you are as a child,
right.
Which means vulnerable, open, curious. This is what happens when you are seen as a child. This frees energy within you so that you can, instead of controlling your outer reality, you can explore your outer reality, because you know that you're seen, so you don't need to waste valuable energy pleasing others. You can go out in the world with curiosity and with joy to see what is there. If you are not seen by your caretakers, what happens is that you will spend so much energy on trying to get their attention, because this is survival for you, that you will not go out in the world and explore the world. What you will do is you will go inward and try to find ways to please the outer world so that you can exist in it. It's a very, very big difference on how you explore the world. In my book, I write about this, where I say that I was so happy when I was a child, when I could dodge fear. I thought that was happiness, when in truth, seeking joy consciously is happiness, not dodging fear. That is survival.
Right.
But you don't, I didn't know that until I started going back in my memories and looking at this and telling myself, wait a minute, why am I happy when I could dodge some fear? This would be, oh my God, thank you, I made it. And then focus on my joy. But I never did that. I was satisfied with dodging fear. That's not a life, that's a survival.
Right. That reminds me, I used to give this keynote talk, and I would ask people, or I would share that not doing bad doesn't make you good.
True.
Doing good makes you good.
True. Exactly.
So like you're saying, dodging fear isn't happiness. Exploring joy is happiness, but it's sad that we've been conditioned that, oh, I dodged that. Oh, I'm happy. That's not happiness. True happiness.
No, it's not. And just realizing it, I mean, when I realized it, it opened my eyes to what I was doing in this reality. Opened my eyes that I need to seek joy consciously. What makes me happy? What am I interested in this world, instead of spending my time dodging fear? Dodging fear might be always trying to please someone, and when they give you something back, you're, oh joy, I was seen by someone. Oh, now I can be happy because I have some kind of value to someone. It will always make you dependent on your outer reality, and that is not the truth. The truth is that you do not have to be dependent on your outer reality. You're the authority and sovereign human being from within, exploring the outer reality. You own the outer reality. It doesn't own you. That is the difference in this. And it has to do with being seen or not seen by your parents, because it's connected to survival mechanisms, which are triggered if you're not seen by your parents. And as I say, you might be unfortunate to be born to a narcissist and a victim, and their life and their patterns over your head going back and forth, teaching you how to explore this reality. But you can go back and say, no, I don't think that is the way I want to explore this reality. I'll do this instead. And then start doing it, because it's filters. You lift them off. You allow who you truly are to flow through you by relaxing into who you are. And that's how these filters are. You lift them by looking at them. You don't need to work for them. You just see that they're there, the patterns, and they dissolve when you look at them. When I could see what they were doing, it was dissolved. I didn't go to my parents and say, you know what, you did this and you did that. It doesn't help. I need to see it here in my imagination. That is where the freedom comes from within. It has nothing to do with them and everything to do with me, and looking at it from the right perspective. And it has everything to do with you and everyone else listening and looking at this. It has to do with you, not with your parents. Yeah.
And then we can finally get back to a place of curiosity, which is the purest form of a child, when we ask why.
Yes.
Why? And when we can get back and start asking why, we can have fun with this reality again, and not feel that asking why we're going to be said because I said so, or because it is, or shut down. Like, no, explore, ask why again. Be the fullness of the human that you are here to be on this planet and explore. And it has nothing to do with tethered to anything from the past. No. It is, we've liberated our past so that we can be present in our now moment and in the future. And
yes, to channel the purest presence in the now moment. You can't do that if you have a lot of blockages from the past. So removing them by looking at them, only looking. You don't need to do anything else. You just need to look and understand and say, okay, I get it. It's easy. It's easier than we think. It really is.
This is so good. This is so good. Thank you.
Yes.
It's do it on YouTube. We can close. Thank you everyone for watching. And if you were expecting Facebook sorry, so were we. And the API and Zoom's API are no longer syncing as of this morning, so we switched it over to YouTube. But glad that people found us, and we'll talk to them next weekend.
Yes, we'll figure out how to send it next weekend too.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.